Did anybody notice, and Steve, I'll ask you first on this, the beeline that KLOPP made to Odegaard after the game? Didn't go unnoticed to me at the time, and I see the Echo picked up on it as well. It's there was a little word there. We know KLOPP's a fan of his. We know he tried to sign him when he went to Real Madrid. Do you think there's that in this, or are we reading too much?
There was more than a little word, wasn't there? There was a full-on chat. I mean, much more so than than he offered to any other Arsenal player. So I mean, look, if I'd be surprised if Madrid were overly, keen to let him go. He looks like a really good player. So, but if they were, and Arsenal don't have an option, I don't think. If they were, then I think he's been the kind of player. We haven't got anyone that can kind of play that number 10 properly, have we? Firmino might do it. If Jota plays, he might drop off a bit, but you're not quite the same as that clever little David Silva, Coutinho type, picking little spaces and little passes and creating things. And Odegaard is that kind of player, but he can play off both sides too, can't he? So I think I noticed the same thing, and I mean it was fairly obvious. He quite a long chat with him. So we know Odegaard's a big Liverpool supporter, as everyone is in Scandinavia. But it wouldn't surprise me.
Except Solskjaer, he's a bit of a lone wolf, isn't he? Just out there on his own. Well, he was a Liverpool fan as well, though, wasn't he? Really?
He was.
I didn't realise he's trained with Liverpool in the past as well. I saw a picture on social media. I don't know. I'll probably send it to Connor, and he might be able to put it up for for the YouTube video or whatever. But there's a picture of him training with Gerrard and Coutinho. I assume when Rodgers was manager before he went to Real Madrid.
He did the whole world tour, the Haaland world tour, didn't he? Odegaard did that before he
actually on that, Steve. That's kind of what makes me think there could be a deal to be done here with Madrid, because I think they desperately want a Galactico. They desperately want somebody this summer, and it's going to be hard for them to move on the likes of Kroos and move on Ramos if he does move on, or move on Modric because of the age. So I'm wondering if maybe there is a deal to be done on Odegaard.
Where else they're going to get their money from? Same with Barcelona. They're going to have to. By all accounts from Spain, the notion of them spending 150 odd million quid without shipping 2 or 3 out is ridiculous. So, I'd be quite happy with Odegaard. I think he looks like I say, a really good player. I think I haven't really seen a lot of paper talk about him until what happened at the weekend. But who knows? You'd be surprised if KLOPP didn't like him.
What about you, Jack? Would you have him?
It's an interesting one because he's a player that I've always been a huge fan of, but I was unsure whether he was a player that suited our current system. He is, like Steve said, a player of the caliber of what we've been missing recently. Definitely that type of midfielder, and I love him at the club. Steve speaks about paper talk and rumours there. The rumour was that Arteta was so impressed with Odegaard and that he wants to try and sign him permanently in the summer, and that Real Madrid's stance is that they don't really want him to go. But it was very, very obvious. It was no secret that KLOPP had that chat with him, and Odegaard seemed in awe when the cameras were on him that he was chatting to KLOPP, and we certainly have a bigger pull than Arsenal. So I reckon there's definitely a deal there to be done. We know Gini Wijnaldum is departing we don't know for sure, but it's the worst kept secret in football. It looks very likely now that he'll be departing, and the chances are we'll be after a midfielder in the summer. And there's been lots of talk about a player of the type of someone similar to Gini, so the likes of Renato Sanchez or Basuma or someone like that. But KLOPP may think that with Thiago, who came in the summer, of course, we have enough options with that sort of style of midfielder, and therefore go for someone of the caliber of Martin Odegaard instead. But for me, he's a superb young talent, and he got very unlucky that he got that move to Real Madrid at such a young age, such an early age. And
unlucky, did he say? Unlucky.
He's lucky.
Poor lad. The poor lad.
He's lucky in the fact that it's a big payday for him. But in terms
of at Sociedad, to be fair, he did very well there.
Exactly.
I know what you mean. I'm just picking you. I know what you mean. I know what you mean.
He made that big move too soon, and he's had to get his career back together really with a couple of low moves that have worked. And I wondered how he'd adjust to the Premier League, but he's impressed me in an Arsenal shirt. And he's a player. Obviously, I do stuff looking at academy players and young players, and he's a player that I've had my eye on for the last few years. And he's a player that I'd love to see in a Liverpool shirt. That's for sure.
The 4-2-3-1.
Go ahead.
Sorry,
go ahead.
The 4-2-3-1 is an interesting thing, though, isn't it? Because if he is going to play a bit more 4-2-3-1, he might just feel like he's got enough for the two. It's going to be, Fabinho plus one other, isn't it? Really, and that's Henderson, Keita, or Thiago. And he might, Curtis Jones doesn't really fit into a two, does he? Neither does Oxlade-Chamberlain.
But
you'd imagine Jones would be the left of the three, if needed.
Well, he could be the left of the three, or it could be like number 10 or something. So he might just feel like he's got enough. If he does think he's going to play a bit more 4-2-3-1, he might just feel like a number 10 type player is a bit more useful.
I've been waiting to get you on, Steve, because you're the inside man with the scoop, with the resources, with the know-how to give us a bit of information on this Konate deal. I've been pestering you on WhatsApp, and I know that you're friends with the gentleman that broke the story, or at least you're a lot friendlier than me and Jack are with Mr. Ornstein. And it's so funny, isn't it? You see David Ornstein breaking the story, and then Mr. Tap-In Merchant Fabrizio Romano is in like a light, and I do find that funny. I really find the whole Fabrizio Romano stuff funny, because I can't remember too many things that he's been first on with regards to particularly English football. But David Ornstein, and I've seen James Pearce speak about it as well. But anything that little tidbits you've heard, or
I work with David Ornstein at the BBC. I played in the same football team as him. He's a good lad. He's a good mate of mine, and he has really genuinely impeccable sources, and he still, anybody that's worked at the BBC is of the mindset where you double source things, you triple source things. You don't just hear a rumor and you pile in, and
So he's definitely not Indy Kayla. Then we can clear that up.
He's definitely, we can definitely clear that up. And I actually asked Orno the other day about a couple of those accounts, and he was fairly scathing about them, because his sources are very, very, very good, and he's told me a lot of things in the past about deals that were going to happen, and they've happened, and the occasional one you get it wrong, but that's not down to the sources or the information you get in. Things change, don't they, from time to time? But he's he's a good guy, phenomenal sources. I texted him as soon as I saw that Konate deal, and I said, what's the crack? Is it done? And he said basically like not done, but well on the way. And in his words, he said it'd be a huge deal.
It's interesting as well. I spoke to James Pearce a couple of months ago about potential incomings in the summer, and James Pearce identified Konate then as one player that he thought Liverpool might look to get. So, it's one that I didn't seem to think much of it at the time, and just thought that was James Pearce, guessing that that might be someone that Liverpool are keeping an eye on. Obviously, there was a lot of talk on Konate in January, and then the other day this news breaks. So I think it's a really interesting story, and Craig, we spoke about it last week, didn't we? But it's good to hear Steve saying that about Ornstein and being well on the way for it, because he's a top centre half, and another one that's still very, very young, just 21 of course as well. And personally, for the last year or so, I feel as though he's better than Upamecano, and you hear all this talk coming out of Leipzig about having this really talented young centre half in Dayot Upamecano. But for me, I prefer Ibrahima Konate, and have them for a long time. And I think it'll be a really, like Steve said, that Ornstein said there. I think it'll be a huge deal for this football club, and he's one that would be an exceptional deal for us. And if we can keep him fit. We've got three incredible centre halves in Van Dijk, him, and Joe Gomez.
Steve, what interests me on this one is we know he's got a release clause, Konate. We know he's entering into the final year of his contract at the end of this summer. So in from stage left comes Michael Edwards. What would you do in this scenario? Do you pay the release clause, or do you think that you've got enough clout with the player now maybe that you can try and wiggle a bit here.
I think you just pay it, don't you? I mean, it's not, it's not a release clause, clause that's so prohibitive that you can't pay it. So I 40 million euros, isn't it? I think, I think you just get it done. I think you just get it done. And we saw, didn't we, a couple of people from Leipzig come out and say, well, I don't think it's going to happen. You pay the release clause, it doesn't matter what they think. It's entirely irrelevant. So, I can see it. And like I said, we all know there's a handful of journalists that when they tweet something or when they break something, we know it's, it's well sourced. And I can reassure you that David is one of those people that he wouldn't go with something unless he was pretty sure that it was bang on. So yeah, it's exciting.